Hello. Welcome to episode number 18 of Office Hours, the show where I answer your questions about game mastering at tabletop role-playing games, which is the thing that I know a thing or two about, answering questions and role-playing games. So how does this work? You go to my website. Don't do it right now, because, we're hanging out, we're doing the thing. But when I'm done, go to my website, www.adam-koval.com, click the Office Hours link, fill out that little form, then I'm going to get an email, I'm going to look at your question, I'm going to listen to your pretty voice, and we're going to talk about your question. Again, not today, in the future. In the distant future. The year 2000. No. So, today, a little bit of a grab bag. We're moving away from the last episode, and the last episode's focus on a very specific game. So today we're broadening back out, and we're going to talk about a couple of things that are causing you disconcertion. They're fucking up your Christmas, so to speak. The first question, this question, mother of God, okay, this comes up a lot, this question. Many of them do. I try to pick the ones that appeal to everybody. This question comes up a lot, and it's like, it's just like a screwdriver, like a hot screwdriver in my brain, because it's such a hard question to answer. I'm going to try to answer it as best I can, but if there is a subtext of just don't do it, if you hear that in my voice, if you read between the lines, and what you're reading is just don't, there's a reason for that. Because well, here we go.
How would you go about creating a compelling mystery storyline? Thanks.
Bam, 7 seconds. Might be the fastest question we've ever had. All right. So, the crucial thing here is mystery, storyline, 5e campaign. Now, the great thing about this is I'm going to give you a bunch of advice that I may or may not have followed myself. And we're going to talk about the difference between the unknown and a mystery, right? So, the thing is, like, first off, this is all too common among GMs, especially new GMs or GMs who are primarily experienced with the most popular role-playing game in the world. Trying to make D&D do a thing that sounds like it would be fun, and it might be, at the table, but for which there's no support, right? The question here isn't, how do I make a mystery fun? How do I make a mystery interesting? How do I make my players enjoy it? It's, Sock the Bard's already saying, my players really like it. My players like the mystery, but I'm worried it's going to be too easy or hard. So we're going to talk a little bit about tweaking the difficulty of the mystery, but we're also going to talk about mysteries in general. So here's the thing, right? D&D is designed such that the characters are mechanically inclined by both the abilities on their character sheet and the reward structure of the game towards tasks involving murder, acquisition of coin and treasure to further the murder machine, and exploration so that we can find locations full of shit to murder. And those things fit well with the premise of the system, and they're easy to do. They're easy to balance. The game gives you all kinds of advice. I mean, I'm playing a 5e campaign right now. I'm GMing one for the first time in a long time, and it's easy. It's easy to create balanced encounters. Obviously, players can fuck things up with bad strategy, but the point being, the game gives you these tools. There's nowhere in the Dungeon Master's Guide, there's nowhere in the Player's Handbook, nowhere in the Monster Manual, or any of this other bullshit that says, here's how to make a mystery work using the tools we've given you in 5th edition, because you are not supposed to. Right? You're going off plan here. There are blueprints for a successful campaign mechanically, and you have crumpled them up, and you've thrown them in the garbage. And for that, you brave soul, I salute you, and I hope that you can continue. But the point being, if you want to do anything else besides dungeon fucking, the point being here is that you're in hot water without a paddle because you're on your own. You got to come to this guy to help you out, or the internet, and that's scary. So maybe we can help, I hope. We'll see. The point being that in D&D, when you want to do something, say you're a player of Dungeons & Dragons, you really only have two things to work with, right? You've got the shit in the game. You have the game itself. You got your cure wound spells. You got your backstabs. You got your +5 scimitars. You got all the shit on your character sheet. And then you have your own brain narrating your way through things, using that stuff on the sheet to make fictional sense of the world you're supposedly occupying. And there are skills in Dungeons and Dragons that might make you think that you can make a mystery out of this game. Like, I don't know, there's an investigation skill, right? So you're like, damn, investigation. That's a skill I have. But those skills are not there to make scenes or sessions, or certainly not entire campaigns about investigation. They're there to skip that shit. Right? It's the skip button. It's this cinematic is boring me, let's investigate it and move the fuck on. It's there to elide the details of that kind of scenario. So if you look at D&D, there's this massive, beautiful, nuanced, crystalline structure of combat resolution mechanics, and there are these tiny little bullshit skip buttons for persuasion and investigation and all this other stuff, because the game doesn't care about that. The game makes them small for a reason. And so as designed, what they really want you to do is montage your way through a mystery. To be like, who murdered the king? I roll investigation. Oh shit, it was a necromancer, right? It's not, let's put on our deer hunter hats and gather up our magnifying glasses and go about the fucking castle looking for clues. You know, like Sherlock and his brother Minecraft. The point here is those skills elide those details to get you to the point where you can get back to fucking up monsters, right? So from a design perspective, so this is the part where I give advice that isn't answering the question, but if I'm speaking for Dungeons and Dragons, the answer here is assign a DC according to the character's level, make that investigation roll, describe the results based on whether they succeed or fail, move on back to the D&D stuff. But that's not fun, really. According to what your players, it sounds like your players want. And it might be fun if you were just trying to play D&D as it's written on the page, but you, my friend, are a warranty-voiding monster, and that's okay. So your players and you want more mystery out of this shit. So you got two options. You can just play a different game. Just stop it. Stop playing D&D. Don't. It's not a mystery game. You're doing it wrong. You want a mystery. You don't play Monopoly if you want to solve a mystery. You play Clue. Maybe. Well, you never play Monopoly. But the point here is, I don't know what to suggest to you because mysterious shit is so hard to design around. And even games explicitly about mysteries have never done it for me. I'm looking at you, Gumshoe. You're not good at what you say you are, in my experience. Because mysteries rely on the illusion that there's a chance of failure, right? So in Dungeons and Dragons or in Gumshoe or in whatever, in a role-playing game, the mystery model needs to be such that the GM knows everything, right? The GM knows every detail of the situation, and the players begin knowing nothing, like fucking nothing. They get the little clue, right? They get the mysterious note under the door, they get the blood stains, they get the body that died of mysterious means, and it's on the players to guess and deduce their way from Nothing Town to Solutionville. And there's this illusion that they can fail, right? Because that's the tension. Like, uh-oh, what if we don't solve the mystery? Then the Boston Castle Strangler, there's fantasy, will still be out there Boston strangling people. And that's just patently not fun in a game, in a role-playing game, right? Like, that's not where the tension of Dungeons & Dragons comes from. So, as a group, you all have to kind of smile and nod and be like, yeah, no, you could totally fail. But really, the GM's job is to guide players towards... It's so railroady. Mysteries are just a railroad where everyone is putting on the blinders and pretending they're not being railroaded. Because failure is boring in that case. Right? It's the termination of the entire campaign, and that's not fun if you just can't figure it out. So if you want to do the former, if you think there might be a better system for you out there, if you're realizing the D&D is not doing its thing, great, move on, find another game. You're going to have to do some research. You're going to have to read about a bunch of different games, see how their mechanisms work, and pick one that fits what you expect to get out of your mystery campaign. But by then, you've left this whole problem behind. It's not really an answer to the problem. It's just doing a different thing. So we're going to presume you want to do the latter. I'm going to presume you want to keep playing D&D. And that's okay. So we're going to presume that. So you could just freeform it, right? You could describe the clues and the mystery bits, and the characters will assess their way around by way of the player's own inherent smarts and intuition, right? This is the we played Dungeons and Dragons for 4 hours and nobody touched the dice approach. Now you can take that approach. You can do that. But you might as well be playing a LARP in that case because you're not engaging with the rules. Not to say LARPing is bad. Mystery LARPs might be cool. I don't know. I've never played one. Point being here, you are ignoring the game. And that's not what I would ever suggest because we're here to play role-playing games. We're not here to make up shit willy-nilly without adhering to some kind of structure. RPGs require a G. They require a game. That's what the G stands for. Did you know that? Trivia. Mysterious trivia. So the thing is here is you're not doing this, like I said, you're not doing like a freeform LARP, though you could be, but you want to play D&D. You could freeform it, allowing them to just figure things out themselves. But the problem here is that you're skipping out on the characters. You're bypassing them completely. I'm not that great of an investigator, but if my character's got a +10 in investigation, I better fucking be able to use it in your mystery storyline, or you are ripping me off as a GM. You're telling the system to ignore the fact that I have invested energy into this skill. So you need to find a way to play nice with the mechanics. And the trick here with the mysteries is that either you as the GM, and this is where we're getting into the too easy, too hard part, you might think as a GM that you've built this complex, interesting mystery, and the players blow through it right away, and the opposite occurs, right? Where they're just like, nah, nope, all your smart bullshit, we see right through it. I know the answer. Obviously, it was necromancers, right? You accidentally overdescribe something, and bam, necromancers. We're gonna go right to the necromancer's house and murder him. Which is, you might as well have just done the investigation roll in that case. Or you make a mystery that to you seems like gradual and a slow burn, and it builds up, and they'll figure it out, and maybe there's some red herrings that, of course, they're smart, they'll figure out to ignore, and eventually get to the end, and then you spend 17 sessions before they even get to the first real clue, because your players are a bunch of dummies. They're not actually dummies, it's everyone's fault. Because perspective is a big deal. When you're making up the mystery, perspective is hard here. And players have a really hard time dividing character and player, especially if they're very focused mechanically. Because if someone says, well, I put the clues together, and my character works out the solution. They're doing exactly the same thing, exactly the same fucking thing, as if they say, I pick up my sword, and my character kills the orc with it, right? Now, when we tell a GM, I pick up my sword and I kill the orc, we don't then turn to the player and say, okay, go pick up that sword and swing it at that ham hock until I'm sufficiently satisfied you would have killed the orc. But this is what we expect people to do in mystery situations in Dungeons and Dragons. We expect them to use their brain to solve a problem that their character's brain is much better suited at solving. So what you have to do is take a step back from all of that. And I think apply some GM, let's say magic. Let's call it magic. What I would do and have tried to do in the past is come up with a core unknown. Because that's really what's a mystery is about, right? That's really what's going on, is this core. Usually it's a whodunit, sometimes it's a whydunit, sometimes it's a where done it. Anyway, the point is here that there's a thing that the players don't know, and the characters don't know. So you come up with that, you come up with something that causes tension. Why do they need to figure it out? Why does it matter, right? Because if they don't figure it out, they won't get paid. I usually put a time limit on this kind of stuff, like something bad will happen if you don't do it soon, because then you have this countdown clock and you can play with it. And this way, if they fuck up and they don't succeed at the mystery, if they don't figure it out at the last minute, you can spring the big bad thing on them and it's their fault. And the mystery doesn't become about yes, no, it's not about a binary situation. It's about, did you get enough information to be prepared? And we'll talk about a game that does this really well, this non-mystery thing, in a second. It's called Transylvanian Adventures. You know what, Fika, we'll talk about it now. So Transylvanian Adventures has 2 phases. It's built on the DCC engine. It's a fantastic game. Totally underappreciated, I think, because it's this very like indie hack with one book and an adventure. Anyway, Transylvanian Adventures is basically Dracula or Frankenstein, old Hammer horror RPG. And there are 2 phases, and one phase is the adventure phase where you like run around in Dracula's castle, you know, killing his Draculoids. But the other half is this preamble phase where you get to take a certain amount of time to combat this doom mechanic. So the vampire or the werewolf or the Frankenstein or whatever is powerful. It's this powerful monster. And when you fight Dracula, maybe he's got 2d20 to add to every roll. And that is fucking nuts, right? He's just going to blow you away. Now, you can, on day 1, as soon as the campaign begins, when the GM says, you awaken in the town of Vampiresville, and there's the swaying garlic fields lie dying in the misty morn. Where do you go? And they're like, fuck it. We draw our Gatling guns and charge forth into Castle Draculoid and we fuck that vampire up. He's going to wreck you because he's got 3d20 for every action, right? He's adding his 2d20. So what you do instead is every day you spend in the village, in the vampire village, investigating, building up ideas, figuring out clues, investigating NPCs, building weapons, doing all this shit. You have essentially downtime. Every time you do that, if you do it successfully, you make rolls to reduce Dracula's ultimate dice pool down to a point where you could actually fight him. So while the character is investigating, it's weakening the big boss encounter. And the risk here is the longer you spend, the more likely bad things will happen to your character. So there's this like this day, it's called like day 0 or whatever, where the GM knows in his mind, okay, if you spend 5 days doing this, something really bad will happen. And you don't know that. You don't know what day it is. So there's this tension where you're working your way, you're crawling your way towards building as much stuff as you can, literally or figuratively, to defeat Castle Dracula. But if you do it too long, villagers start dying from the Draculoid plague, and it becomes bad, right? You've kind of lost the point, and it affects your end reward structure. So tension, right? And the mystery is sometimes like, you know, what monster did this? And you will find out, even if you fail all your investigation, you'll find out, because the GM, when you get to day 0, the GM will be like, okay, all right, so you didn't quite figure out that it was the reincarnation of the former king's cousin's brother's long-lost dog's owner's girlfriend, who died tragically in a yodeling accident in the year 10 while being attacked by a Yeti. Right, you didn't figure all that out, but it's cool because the Dracula Yeti monster is now rising up from the grave and rampaging, and now you have to deal with him, even though you didn't solve the mystery, right? You get it turned over to you in the end. So there isn't that railroady assumption that one way or another you'll end up figuring the mystery out, or you'll do nothing. The campaign will just come apart. So anyway, going all the way back, what I do when I do things like this, like the last arc of Mirror Shades, you know, Ue Javier Flores, I established the mystery, right? Javier, where'd the guy go? He disappeared. Who's interested in him? Some major players. And if you don't get him in time, you won't get paid, right? And then I worked backwards, filled in the major clues that can be applied regardless of success or failure, right? Either you will find out these things, or in your investigation, you will twig somebody's attention and they're going to come after you. I guess what I mean here is that you have to just assume the PCs will eventually figure shit out, or do the dogs in the vineyard treatment and say that the world will move on without the PCs. That's a much more logical assumption. The world will just carry on, and what's going on is the PCs are preparing for that confrontation or climax, and each clue prepares them for the end, but there will still be an ending of some kind, no matter what. Design your mystery as though the PCs would never touch it, and then let them get in there and fuck around with it. These indispensable momentum building clues, you know, the like point A to point B stuff that has to happen in a very railroady mystery, has to come either from player action or from some outside force, and you want to obfuscate them as much as you can, so the illusion of we might never find out is less true. I mean, it's true, but it's less true or relevant than what if we don't find out in time? So you build your core unknown and build around it and flesh that out. And then here's the big fucking cheat. Here's the big cheat. Here's the thing. This is the thing you can do, and it's a big cheat, and it doesn't matter. Just fuck up the railroad. Let the players decide inadvertently the real answer to your problems or the complications to your mystery. Because when a player says, and they always do this, right? There's always this like, ooh, what if this guy did it? I bet it was Colonel Mustard in the abattoir with the glaive. And you're like, oh, shit, that's great. No, that's a much better idea. It was going to be a candlestick in the study, but fuck that. Just steal it. Just fucking steal it. Just do that. Do that instead. It's more fun. Forget it. Like, you could just, the mystery doesn't matter. Nobody cares about the like real ending. Fuck true endings. Just keep things moving. Feel free to like mess around as you go. There's no actual mystery. It's not real. It's all it's an improvisational act. So let their ideas and your new ones change things as you go. Just keep in mind, if you've already established something to be true, you get two options to fuck with it. You can either stick to it, right? If you're like, the clues, these are the clues, and they make sense in a certain justified understanding, right? We found an Ares, or we found a Ruger Super Warhawk at the scene of the crime. Now, those are only used by certain types of cops, right? They're only used by Lone Star. So it points to a crooked cop. But then if your players come up with an idea like, oh, what if someone stole it? All you have to do to run with that storyline is introduce an NPC who is a disgraced cop who had his firearm stolen, right? And then you've just hit a wall, bounced off in a different direction, and you're headed towards something cool. And the players are going to feel really good when they get there and they're like, I knew it was a disgraced cop. Yes, I'm so smart. And you're like, yes, you are so smart because you just GM'd yourself into this situation. Your prep is only as useful as what you're getting out of it, and it doesn't deserve any more attention than you already gave it prepping it. So if you don't like it anymore or you like something different, stick to the reality. The other thing that you can do is, you can basically, once you've given a clue and you've set up something in the world, let the players figure out what they think it is, and then either let them be wrong but lead them to something interesting, or let them be right because it's more fun than whatever you came up with. So do that. You know, and the thing is, if all of this, you have to take this with a grain of salt, because if you do it inelegantly, you are going to be really obvious and your players will probably pick it up and it's going to feel disingenuous. So this is not 101 stuff. You got to be comfortable with improvisation. Your players also, if your players come to, this is the thing, if your players get mad about you improvising a mystery, they come to you and they're like, no, we wanted to figure out all the details of your super special mystery that you planned out for months and months and months. They're asking you to do work that you obviously don't want to do. So give them these instead. These are for your players. And tell them to do some fucking work themselves. It's an improvisational storytelling experiment. That's what role-playing games are. So tell them to just chill their shit if they want the Gygaxian world building out of you and you don't have the time or the energy for it. The thing is, I just hate mysteries in games. I hate them. Like, I don't like them the way they're structured. I like uncertainty. I like the unknown. But I'm the kind of person who will just tell a player, this is what this NPC is thinking. This is what they're feeling. It's obvious to you. They're lying. They're lying to your fucking face. You can tell these things. Because in the same way that PCs get the, like, secret eye language, GMs can just tell PCs stuff. Don't dangle shit in front of them. It's boring and I hate it. So giving advice for this, I think, is hard for me. It's very hard. And I hope that either there's a system out there that you can steal stuff from that you like, that maybe I don't, but you might, or that this advice will help you create a more Kobold-style mystery. Man, now I want an In-N-Out burger. Where was I? Winging it. Anyway. Good luck. Building a mystery. I got feelings about these things. So, all right. We're going to talk about experience. Ironically, we're going to talk about experience and stars without number, which, nobody ever gets experience. Well, we're going to talk about that.
Hi Adam. I recently GM'd some Stars Without Number, and I had some issues with the goal-based XP system. One player set himself an easy task and got a little XP, whilst another player accomplished all of his much harder tasks and thus shot ahead and leveled up. Should I be trying to keep XP rewards similar for each player in order to keep each BC important, or should characters get the XP they earn? To summarize, should XP be rewarded fairly or equally?
Experience points. All right. Back in the day, there was a game called Dungeons and Dragons. And in Dungeons and Dragons, you were awarded experience points. And your experience points would accumulate. And at certain thresholds, that would level up and become a more powerful adventurer. And thus was born the basic reward system for just about every role-playing game in the history of time. Just about. Reward systems. So I love goal-based experience points. Goal-based reward structures. I love them. They're fucking great. And I love them in Stars Without Number. And I love them in Torchbearer. And I love them in Lady Blackbird. And I love them in Dungeon World. I fucking love them. I love them more than arbitrary showing up for the session experience. I love them more than the bullshit GM fiat, you did a good job experience. I even love them more than challenge rating based experience points. And let's talk about a bunch of different ways that they're handled. So in Torchbearer, for example, Artha comes at least partially from resolving your goals. Stars Without Number, you get both mission and goal-based experience, right? You get, as a group, you get a mission that's assigned to you. You do that, you get experience. And you set your own goals and get experience for those. Lady Blackbird has keys. Lots of other games, indie games, use keys. Keys are like, when you do X, you get experience. Dungeon World has it. When you perform your alignment behavior, you get a point of experience. Marvel Heroic does this really cool, like, when you do this, it has a tiered system. Like, the first time you do this thing, get an experience. When you do the next thing, get 3 experience. When the next thing, get 5. So these things pile up. And there's a bunch of different ways to do these, but fundamentally, all they are, the thing that they all have in common, is instead of, say, like game level, non-player set, so system set goals, they turn the authority of the reward structure over to the players of those characters, right? So it's not like you're all going to ask Dungeons and Dragons. Well, let's compare and contrast. 2 very, very similar systems, one built on the other, in fact. Let's compare. So Moldve, basic Dungeons and Dragons, my favorite D&D, back in the day, you get experience for 2 things. Ichiban, gathering treasure, at a rate of 1 experience point per gold piece value recovered from the dungeon. Go into a dungeon, gather up 10,000 gold, return home, gain 10,000 experience points. Go to the dungeon, get 500 gold, die, recover nothing, gain no experience points. Simple system. Niban, number 2, overcoming monsters. About 10 experience per hit dice. Not worth it. Pittance experience. But it's there. Stars without number, at least the way I've always played it, you're rewarded for completing fictionally established missions for some external party. Mercenary jobs, delivery jobs, whatever. Or completing your own personal goals, which you write at the beginning of a session. Both of these things are valid methods of rewarding players for doing stuff, which is one of a few ways a role-playing game operates. The role-playing games get you to do things by rewarding you and by giving you tools for doing those things. They convince players to behave a certain way in the game to continue to move them forward. And it's easier if you want to think about it this way. If this is easier, you can imagine that every character in D&D actually has a personalized goal. They just happen to all be the same. And it's the only one the system rewards for every character. So everyone has the same goal. Because the premise of the game is you are these kinds of people. You are bullshit adventurers. You're going into dumb dungeons and you're fighting idiot monsters. And you're coming back with gold so you can level up, so you can fight more monsters. It's the eternal cycle. Cue the Elton John, away we go, right? Everyone has that goal. But I really like personalized goals in role-playing games because as a GM, it makes your job so much easier. I don't have to guess what my players want. I don't have to judge whether they're bored with the dungeon crawl because they'll just tell me because that's the only fucking thing they can do. You are wasting your time and energy doing anything other than getting paid, right? If you are playing Moldvay D&D and someone wants to spend a whole session in town talking to NPCs, they are fucking it up. They're playing wrong, and that's okay. You can play role-playing games wrong and still have fun, but don't do it. I mean, okay, don't let me tell you what to do, but seriously, there's a way to play a game and there's a way not to. So follow those things. So you as a GM with personalized goals, expand that, and you're asking each individual player, hey, person, why do you want to play this game? What are you, what? Why? And they're telling you, look at their character sheet, right? If they have a goal like kill my arch nemesis or destroy the government or start a family business, those are all things that are telling you as the GM in the framework of this game, these are the goals that I want to accomplish. Ergo, Mr. or Mrs. or gender non-specific title GM, you need to do these things in the game. And I love it. I love that stuff because this is a way in which the GM is really the servant of the game and its players and not, the overarching godmaster of all things, right? We serve the narrative. And in doing so, we are serving the players to engage that narrative. We're asking them, what do you care about and how can I challenge you to obtain that? It's brilliant, really. It's no shit, right? That's so you make tabletop RPGs fun for people. You give them things to struggle for. And what can be tricky, and this is where we really get into the question at large here from Jordy, is as the GM, most systems will either give you really clear mechanical goals for assigning experience points, or it won't. But either way, it's your job. In Torchbearer, it's easy. You get a small reward, a small kind of reward for working towards but not resolving your goal, and a big one for completing it. There's two kinds of XP that are available to your character there. Did you try at least to get to your goal? Cool. Here's a point. Did you get it? Fucking awesome. Here's a different kind of point that's better. Straightforward. Stars Without Number is a lot more binary, though. Stars Without Number just says, when you're done, you're done. Did you get it? Get it. Here's some XP. And you can kind of do one of two things with this. And you can watch, if you watch Swan Song, there are different player strategies around this that you can adapt your reward structure to. So you can decide in advance how much XP you think the goal will be worth based on the number of expected sessions. Sessions are what Stars Without Number uses to assign goal value. Obtain a new gun. If you think it might only take a single session, great. It's worth X amount of XP, no matter how many sessions it actually takes, right? Because you're supposed to guess, if they were really going for it, this is how many sessions I think it should take. If you have supplant the head of Edgecom Technologies as your goal, that might take 10 sessions. It's going to be worth a lot more, but that's what you think about in advance. You set that XP and you just don't worry about it. You leave it on the sheet until the player does the thing. Now, this can be problematic when the player abandons the thing after they've spent 6 or 8 sessions trying to go for it, and then they get tired of it, right? Or if you underestimate or overestimate how long it will take, that can be a problem too. Now, the other thing that you can do is ignore the XP value initially and reward experience based on the number of sessions in which you actually struggled for that goal. At the end of a session, make a note, like, did they spend a bunch of their time, or some of their time, or at least part of their time? What percentage of it makes you feel good about that? Set that XP after the fact, mark off the notes, and then just count it. Be like, all right, you spent 10 sessions trying to accomplish this. This is how many points you get. And either way you do this, they both have positives and negatives. It's kind of up to you. Your job here is to be impartial. Try to level an appropriate amount of XP at the players based on their goals. Now, not at each other, right? Because goal writing is a part of being good at Stars Without Number. Do not try to flatten out everybody's experience. Don't do that. It's not your job. Let your PCs, players, get better at this stuff. Because Stars Without Number doesn't care about balance. Stars Without Number doesn't give a fuck about balance. Smart players will come up with a big goal and then break it down into several sub-goals to keep them getting XP every session. That way, they're constantly engaged. They know what they need to do. The point here being, like, watch Steven in Swan Song. Steven gets this shit, right? And maybe you didn't see it all because a lot of it came to me via Skype. But what would happen would be he'd come up with a big goal, right? Make a weird science device. But instead of being like, make the device is my goal, his goal would be like, find this component, find that component, put the components together, talk to someone who can help me get a power source, build the thing. And so it's 10 or 15 small goals instead of one big one. And the trick here for your player is that they're constantly engaged. This is like, just like in Burning Wheel, it's writing good beliefs. A good belief gives you something to do today, right now. You can still end up in the same place. You can still kill Mr. Titan. But the point being, you take steps to get there instead of just lunging for that big goal. Because if you lunge for the big goal, you don't know what's going to happen between now and then. It's a long way from you to your dreams. And your dreams might change partway through, and then great, you wasted 5 sessions pursuing a goal that you've now abandoned. Had you broken that down into smaller goals, now if you want to, you get 3 slots. So you can keep the big goal and work at it with small goals and then get the big payoff at the end too. That's valid. Talk to your GM. If you're the GM, talk to your players about how you feel like this stuff should go. Really, though, levels in Stars Without Number don't matter. They're nothing. Like, they just don't. A level 5 character and a level 1 character still can both get one shot by the same gun. So, it's not a huge deal how many hit points you have. The game's reward structure is a bit funny that way. I personally think that money is a much bigger reward part of the game, and focus on that first. At least with Stars Without Number. Yeah, goals and shit. So this last question is about a canon. Several cannons, in fact. Large ones.
Hey Adam, my name is Arne, also known as Ontario. Thanks for all the advice you've given us so far. I'm a huge fan of office hours. And my question is there a good way to introduce players to big established campaign settings, like maybe Forgotten Realms or the Sixth World of Shadowrun? Because I always feel that as a GM, you either overwhelm players with huge piles of information that they can't really digest and maybe aren't even interested in at game start, or you leave out so many information that you as a GM become frustrated because you think that you're selling the setting and the game short, and that there is so much potential being left out. I would really love to hear if there's like a good middle ground. Thanks in advance.
Forgotten Realms, Shadowrun, Star Wars, Dragon Age, Warcraft. You know, we get inspired by cool things in books or movies or TV shows, and we want to play a game set in those worlds for lots of reasons. Now, this is where I'm a huge hypocrite, because generally in a role-playing game, I'm like, just make up your own shit. You're smarter and better and cooler than George Lucas. Fuck that guy, right? You can make up something better than ripped-off samurai movies with laser swords. And yet, here I sit, having recently both run an entire Shadowrun campaign and a Star Wars campaign, and I know well this struggle. God, I mean, running a game in any setting that has this well-developed, highly established, nuanced, detailed setting can be both a blessing, right, and a curse. It's usually a curse. Like 80% curse. Like 4 out of 5 curses. The thing you end up confronted with is this massive world with this like insane amount of details that came about as a result of either a huge TV budget or a series of novels or a canon of movies and books and extended universe shit and other nerds and the whole internet and Wikipedia. Or maybe you're just looking at a ludicrous game designer's 400-page settings supplement, right? Maybe you're looking at something that's been around for decades, and Ed Greenwood just really wants you to know every single name of every day of the calendar of Harptos. Like, these games are hard to run, because if you're running them in the traditional Gygaxian model, you're expected to know every detail of the setting, right? You're the GM, motherfucker. Why don't you know the almanac entry for today? Is it going to rain or not? Check the fucking charts, GM. And it's an insane amount of pressure. If you're responsible for knowing everything, you have to know everything. It's much easier to just make that shit up as you go. Right? So it's very difficult. But hold up. On the other hand here, you have a commonality of reference that is just pure fucking magic, right? We have feelings. We have these like deep-seated, powerful emotions built in around these nerd cultural icons that when I tell you, you escape the atmosphere of the planet just in time. A squadron of TIE fighters screaming behind your shuttle. The system's hyperdrive is whining. It's not ready to go. You're still trapped in the gravity well, and suddenly a dark shadow falls over your shuttle, and the swell of the Imperial March rises up in the soundtrack as a Star Destroyer hovers overhead. You're gonna have feelings. You're gonna be like, oh shit, we're fucked. Right? Because you know what a TIE fighter is, you know the sound, you can hear that TIE fighter screaming at you. You know what that tension feels like. That's the advantage. That's what we get. That's what we buy in to as GMs when we do that. We get a free shot at not having to say, as you escape the surface of the planet, a squadron of bulb-shaped, single-pilot, hex-winged fighter ships make a distinct ion engine-sounding noise as they fly towards you. An arrowhead-shaped ship flies overhead. It's an Imperial Star. Like, we have the visual lexicon already. But the problem here is that shared understanding comes with a real price. And the price you pay is verisimilitude. Verisimilitude requires that you stay true to the established universe, you stay true to its rules, you stay true to the fictional material as it stands, because if you don't, you're undermining all of that freebie shit that you get from playing the game in the first place. And it sucks because as a GM, you want to be able to just make stuff up. But that's what we get, right? We agree to play by the rules when we do this. So if the game says, this is how the universe works and we want to hack it, we're going to be undermining the thing. We're throwing out some of the benefit that we've got from allowing people to buy in at a fictional cultural level. The other hand here, the other problem you might run into, I guess, is that kind of thing, that kind of understanding is imbalanced, right? Even though they might mean well, your players might stop you every few minutes to correct your pronunciation of a place, or tell you the vehicle you've just described won't be manufactured until after a certain battle. They'll tell you that a certain planet is not where you say it is. You have to be very careful because that Gygaxian model of the GM knows all gets flipped when anyone can look anything up, and sometimes people, Jesse Cox, are bigger Star Wars nerds than you are, Adam. And that's okay. You have to have that conversation with the players in advance. You can say, you know more about Star Wars than me, so feel free to jump in. If I mispronounce something, man, hit me. You tell me that I'm doing that. And if something comes across as like wrong, save it. Don't tell me in the session. Tell me after, and I'll work with a way to retcon that stuff, right? Like Dark Troopers shouldn't technically exist after the second Death Star blows up, right? The Dark Troopers were abandoned, but it makes sense that there could be some around in secret facilities, leftovers, whatever. You're allowed to bend that stuff, and you can talk to your players about this. And this goes mostly, and I'm using Star Wars as the example because it mostly is how we have to deal with this stuff. Popular media applies equally to every game with massive piles of supplemental shit in their own canon. But the problem here can happen just inside role-playing games, right? There are role-playing games that have a tiny mechanical footprint attached to a huge, fucking expansive world. White Wolf, I'm looking at you, you egregious motherfuckers. For many, though, that's why we play, well, no, you know what? It's not why we play them. For many people, that's why we like those games. What gives them life? We spend more time reading role-playing games than we do actually using all that material in a game. You know, I know that for me, like, let me get out of the way. Look at all of these White Wolf books. Look at them all. I have so many. I've not used all of these at the table, but I've read all of them. And they create seeds for campaigns. They create character background stuff. They're bits and pieces of knowledge that we obtain about the world, and when we read a vampire book, we are having fun with that book as a piece of fiction, but also allowing it to plant the seed in our mind of what it might be like to rise up and take our place as dark vampire prince of Boise, Idaho. Right? Like, they're there for inspiration. But you can also run into a character who's built on assumptions that as a GM you know nothing about. So when a player comes to you and they say, I want to be a 9th generation Sabbat Ventru anti-tribu who's secretly a member of the Tal Mahira, and I want to have diablerized a Tremere so that I can have blood thaumaturgy, and also I have a gargoyle who's my pet, and because he belonged to the Tremere that I diablerized and he's in love with me. And you as the GM are like, I like Clan Gangrel. They're cool. Right? It can be awkward when they know more than you. The other thing you can run into is flattening that terrain. Like giving everybody the same platform to work from is very hard. I'm going to give you a little anecdote. We're going to talk about a little time-appropriate Gen Con story time. You ready? So Gen Con a couple of years ago, I played Colonial Marines. This is the Aliens-inspired, it's the Aliens Torchbearer hack. And I played it with Luke and a couple of other people who are all both either in the military or very familiar with it, and they're huge Aliens fans. and I played it with a Kickstarter employee who had never seen Aliens. So, for some of us, that game experience was really fun. It was all inside jokes and sharp sticks and game over man and bullshit machismo. But for that one player, it was a lot of confusion and concern that we were being a bunch of like macho dude role players, and it didn't make any fucking sense. And so that kind of imbalance can come up at some really basic levels, right? Like you, versed GM in all things fantasy, you probably know your way around a Bec de Corbin, and you could tell me the difference between a Flind and an Erd. But folks who are brand new to D&D don't have that level of knowledge. You still have to tell them what a bugbear looks like. We take these things for granted, I think. And it's not just about characters not knowing things. It's about players feeling under-equipped to play the game properly, right? It's not a licensed universe problem. It's not a failed novelist 90s game problem. It's an RPG media problem, and we need... I think the thing is the need to contribute to a defined world goes pretty deep, right? This goes back to like the earliest stuff in D&D was just Tolkien fan fiction, essentially, right? It was the Battle of Five Armies, and then it was the Fellowship of the Ring, but like with their names changed, going on a mystical adventure. Some of it's unavoidable. We need to expect that our committed players, folks who will get excited about the game, make a good faith effort to learn about the setting if we're playing in an established setting. We also need to devalue the details, right? Let's talk about a good example here. So the GM, you need to just not overwhelm people. Let's talk about Shadowrun. So you can make a one sheet or a small paragraph or a couple of tweets. I don't give a fuck. Post it in your Slack channel. Tell them the basic stuff that they need to start thinking about characters, because characters are all that matter in a role-playing game, fundamentally. Shadowrun. A, the world is a cyberpunk corporate dystopia. Right? They can look up dystopia, they can look up cyberpunk. If they don't know what those two things are, they're just words. They're not Shadowrun specific. Okay. Magic has returned to the world after a time of deep sleep and created many different monsters and races and given people special abilities. Okay, cyberpunk, dystopia, magic. There are operatives in this world, people who live on the fringes of society, who are called Shadowrunners. They work for mysterious patrons, doing cool shit for money and fame. You are them. Done. That's Shadowrun. That's all you need to know to get you started. Start small. Let your players learn their way forward based on the interesting things that draw their attention. Let them look through the book. Give them a week or two. Trust that they'll actually do that. Don't assume they're going to read the whole thing. They're going to look at the pictures. They're going to maybe read like a couple of things. They're going to stop and be like, oh, what's an elf? Oh, neat. It's a pointy-eared guy lives forever guy. Cool. Moving on, right? Come back and ask them, what gets you excited about this? What did you like? What did you see that you thought was cool, right? And when you make characters with them, when you sit with them and they make characters, tell them their choices and give them context about those choices in play. Now, a good game... So many role-playing games don't do this. A good game will teach you about the world as you build your character. A bad game will let you make your character, let you play the game, realize how badly you've fucked up, throw out your character, and your second one might be better. Nice clear watermarks here. But try to mitigate that, right? Try to explain the context of things. Try to tell them why your character might want to be strong or fast or whatever. Like, give them the game details. Show them how those tie into the fiction. And then don't overwhelm them again, right? Let them descend into the darkness of your setting one ladder rung at a time. Don't throw them in the pit. Once you're done with the characters, introduce elements of the world by showing, not telling, right? Oh God. Okay, I've told this story before. I'm gonna tell it again. It's probably my biggest failure as a GM. This is the time at which I fucked up the worst. So it was in a campaign of Exalted, so you know this is gonna be good. So I was playing Exalted. We were playing a game where the characters were dragon-blooded. They were, in fact, this campaign, a lot of it was inspiration for the Court of Swords game that I'm running now on roleplay. They were playing magistrates of the Scarlet Empire, and their job was to go to this city and to oversee the joining of two families through a wedding. And the mistake that I made was at the beginning of the session, I said, all right, there are a dozen important dragon-blooded that live in this city. Let's begin. Important dragon-blooded the first. Their name is this. This is what they're about. And I described a short history of every NPC. It took like 45 minutes, and it was so boring. It was the worst. Don't fucking do that. I could have just shown them these things. Stupid, Adam. Real stupid. So show. Don't tell. Don't do that. If in your city, the city you're playing your Shadowrun game in, if the orcs in that city are suffering from racism and police brutality, show them that. Show them orcs being harassed by the cops. Show them jails overflowing. Show them news reports about how the orc menace is taking over the city, right? Show them that. Are elves near worshipped by the local teenage population? Introduce NPCs, introduce situations. Show them things in the game that matter. Don't just tell them about crap. Don't do that. That's boring for everybody. And if you're playing with folks who already know the setting, ask them to help. Ask them to take it slow, think small, slowly build things up, avoid massive backstories, avoid immediately jumping into the meta plot. Don't make your first adventure hunting down the Universal Brotherhood cyber zombie from Aztechnology who secretly killed Dunkelzahn because something earthed on Harlequin, whatever. Don't do that. Lean into it. Take that shit easy. Foreplay, kids. Once somebody's a fan of something, they're going to carry that spark into extracurricular exploration, right? Once you start talking about things in the game, you start describing proper nouns, you tell them, hey, this is a big world. It's been established. There's wikis, there's fan art, there's all kinds of bullshit on the internet. They'll look it up. They'll come back to you and be like, hey, I looked up the city in the Forgotten Realms, and I think maybe my character's from there because it says that in 1348 DR, and you're going to be like, oh, baby. Oh, I love you. Thank you. Thank you. And if they don't, if all they care about is what's on the table, then don't fucking stress about it. That's all they care about. Keep in mind, through all of this, that no matter how much work George Lucas or Jordan Weissman put into their world, you're A, not responsible for dumping it all on your players at once, B, not responsible for dumping it on your players at all, and C, better than them at telling the story with your group at the table. They don't get to be present. They're not there. Doesn't matter. They've contributed. You just do your GM job, explore a world, play at least a little bit to find out what happens, and remember, the only world that exists is the world that stops where the game does, right? What's on screen is all that matters. And all you gotta do is shoot straight, conserve ammo, and may the force be with you. That's how that goes, right? So we pay a price. We pay a price for using these established settings, and in exchange for that price, we get a world of detail that we do not have to work out ourselves. So it's a bit of a gamble. Take it slow. That's all I'm saying. So that's it. That's today's episode of Office Hours. Thank you so much for visiting. This has been me and you and our 3 askers of questions. Thank you very much. And if you want to get involved, if you have questions about GMing, if it's your first time running a game or your 1000th time running a game and you want to know how to handle a particular trick, you can go to www.adam-koebel.com, click on the Office Hours link, fill in a question. Normally we run this show at 10 a.m. Pacific on Mondays. but things have been a little hectic lately. We try to do one a week no matter what, and if you're watching this on YouTube, it's probably Thursday. Thanks for coming, everybody. We will see you next time. Bye-bye.